talk with my brothers, is that too much to ask? Might as well look sharp as I'm doing it too. Trish and talk, Trish and talk, Trish and talk. I wanna know.
You know, this week we thought, you know what?
We thought, you know what we thought? We thought, you know, let's just have the two of us.
Yes.
Just the two of us. Because I know you've been wanting it to be just you.
Yeah, no. No, but if you remember from last week when we had Steph here,
Yes.
I think the that whole idea of probably kind of that we could easily carry this podcast, just the two of us, because of the conversations we always have.
Yeah, but then the danger I feel then is that it becomes a very
Dual thing.
closed thing there. And it's what we were just saying off air. The guest we've had has been, I mean, I'm going to be totally selfish here.
Yeah.
As much as I like listening to you and talking to you, it's been an absolute privilege to have guests on the show, and the guests bring to us so much. And you know, this is a big shout out to our guests because the conversations we've had over the past year have been an absolute revelation.
They've been amazing. They really have been amazing. I think for me, it's just I always have to stop myself from just sitting back and listening to the conversations that everyone else is having, because I have this. I could just enjoy just being the guy behind the scenes.
Yes, the producer.
Yeah, just the producer.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? I could easily be the producer of the podcast and not really feature as one of the co-hosts of the.
Yeah. And what is it about some of the conversations which have sort of like made you just sort of like sit and listen?
I think it's like like you rightly say the wealth of knowledge and wisdom that we have had from I'll say it right from the beginning. I remember the first conversation we had when we went to Fades, and we asked, you know, like some of the people in the barbershop, like when was the last time they cried, and just listening to some of the guys talk about their experience pertaining, you know, like from emotionally expression. You know what I'm saying?
That was a really, really interesting one, because there you got this notion of permission.
Yes.
There were some settings where it was permitted to cry. So at a funeral, you're permitted to cry.
That's it.
But beyond that, then it becomes a bit more sort of like conditional.
But that's it. And I think mainly as men, there's always been this unspoken truth that, yeah, we can be emotional, but outside of everyone's, you know, sight. Because that's why you always find that, you know, even like as statistics do that there's a higher level of male suicide.
Yeah.
Because I think most of our suffering seems to be in secrecy. And I'm sure we have had we have been touched at some point by that.
Is that a secrecy, you think, in terms of suffering, which could be both emotional, psychological, and physical? Because there was a report recently in the paper which was about men being unwell and being so unwell that actually they didn't see the doctor until they were admitted by the A&E.
Does he?
And you can use that idea not just only for the physical but also for the emotional side, the mental health side of things, where people are locked in so much. And I think in our conversations throughout the year, people have been challenging that notion.
That's it.
But they've also been reflecting on that.
And I think also for us, also again, you know, the being in those spaces, I mean, from the man talk, you know, kind of sessions at SACMA every last Friday of the month, and also the thing at Fades at the beginning of the first Friday
of the month,
where you find men gathering and just having candid conversations about what it is that they are dealing with.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things you get from that then is if we are, talking about the need to talk, because I think that's one of the things which I've gained the most from the last year, which is the value of talk.
Mm-hmm.
But behind the value of talk is who you talk with and how you talk.
That's it.
And so both of those men groups that trust is absolutely essential.
It is pivotal.
Yeah.
I think trust is, and also because we are part of a community that doesn't trust very easily.
Well, sometimes it's hard because, you take men, for instance, many men, many of us have spent much of our life there in a competition.
That's it.
We're competing with one another.
Oh, yeah.
So I can't trust you if I compete with you. So I'm going to tell you my deepest, whatever weaknesses, etc., vulnerabilities.
Oh, man.
And then trust you. It's a big step.
It is, but then this is the thing. But do you think, because one of the things that I remember you mentioning that, like this, especially that whole concept of the alpha male, that,
I was never that.
No, but it's the same. I never was. It's like, I think the responsibility of actually seeing another male as a competition for me is like, I'm like, this is tiresome.
Well, that's the bit which I think it's incredibly tiresome.
Yeah.
I think it causes a lot of difficulty because you see it, don't you, sometimes? I sometimes get into it. My entire adult life, some of my most difficult situations have been when I've been competing for the oxygen in the room. I've been competing for being centre stage.
Yeah.
And there's always somebody else there who is louder, funnier, just got more than you. And you think to yourself, why am I doing this? I'm a big man now. I should just let it go. But it's as if you've been hardwired to be like that.
Unlike you, but this is the thing. Do you know, most of my time, I was saying to Kambinga recently, who again we had on the podcast, I was saying to Kambinga that, I've been talking about, kind of writing a book, and the title is Behind the Curtain, symbolizing the fact that I have been privy to a lot of spaces, but behind the scenes, either as a filmmaker or as a photographer. Most of my time has been spent behind the scenes, so I never really get the opportunity to engage. And also even to put my viewpoint. Hence why most of my viewpoints are either when I'm writing something or another. But that kind of gives me a vantage point because I can choose when to engage.
Yeah.
So for me, I never really feel that sense of, like many of us as men, sometimes we want to be seen and be heard. And for
like
me,
the lion in the room.
Yeah, the lion in the room. You know what I'm saying? And for me, it has never bothered me being the guy who is silent. Sometimes I will have a thought and try hard, and I'm thinking I need to say this, but then I am comfortable just swallowing it and just saying, I'm okay with that.
I don't think I have been. And I think that actually one of the things I've learned a lot in the last couple of years, working with SACMO on the podcast and with attending the men's group, is you don't have to be. And actually, it's been a process of self-reflection, which is thinking how much sort of like anxiety, how much has been invested in that. When actually just being able to sit back a bit and to listen. And that's been, there's been a number of people who've been on the podcast there who they've emphasised listening. And if for the podcast to work as well, you have to listen. I don't know if the people out there think we listen.
No,
they
we're listening. We're just saying
we've heard you.
things
You don't
as they
listen.
go.
You just talk.
We just talk. We ain't listening.
Yeah, but people like Delroy, for instance. He really emphasised that importance about listening. Asking and listening.
Yeah,
and that for me is such a powerful thing to ask someone something about themselves. And he said it a number of times there, this idea that you ask somebody, how are you?
Yes.
And actually say it with a real intent. Not just as a sort of cursory, how are you, move on. Yeah. But how are you, and stay with them.
And stay with them. I think that's the thing for me. I noticed it literally on when we had Angela Barros on the podcast, because it's like Angela will listen, but then when you are saying something, you'll see a shift. And it's like these small, minute details that you notice in people as they do what they do, and you'll see a slightly shift, and like you are being listened to and you're being heard, and then
that's
when
important, but
that's it.
That being heard, because
being heard, yes.
people want to be heard. Their lives and their world, they want it to be. We all crave to being heard.
Yes.
I want you to hear my story as such.
That's
and you're right about Angela there. I mean, Angela there, when she talked there about how she felt as a child, she wasn't heard, and she was absolutely committed that with her own children and in her life in general, that she was going to give people that space so that they could be heard.
But that's the thing. It's like every time I interact with Angela, I always feel seen. I think it's the same thing that I always experience when Shelley is around. Shelley, again, another person we had on the podcast.
Yeah.
I think with Shelley Samuels, you always feel like you are being embraced. Like it's like that family member,
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's the same,
It's like your sister who, you go to. I've just been to my sister this weekend. She came up here on Saturday, and I was with her on Monday.
Older sister or younger sister?
Younger sister.
Oh, she's younger sister.
And I sit, yesterday we were sitting, because it's raining, in her front room. And we do this every time. We just talked back and forth about some very important things and then not so important things, but we were listening to one another, and we were I hope I was listening to her. But the thing was, I'm going to shout out to her there, because on the way up, she's just got a new kitchen, and I popped into Waitrose in Nottingham on the way up and bought some flowers for her kitchen. And she sent a little photo up saying they look glorious. And actually, I thought that's nice, because we were saying about you can't come empty-handed to someone's yard.
I am
cannot come empty-handed.
I am exact the opposite, bro. I am exact the opposite.
You travel out empty-handed?
I am as empty as anything, man. Sometimes, I just pop up with literally nothing to leave except my inappropriateness.
I hope you don't expect to be fed then as well.
No, well, but that's the thing, it's a given, isn't it?
And the people will say, that Lungani, he's empty-handed and he still wants to eat.
Yeah. But then the weird thing is, like, I always leave with something.
Yes. That's to get rid of you.
I always leave with
if
something.
you give him something, he might go.
Yes. No, that's it. I have there's a this guy we call it an uncle of ours. At my church. Yeah. We call it Uncle Sokone. He is like Zambian. He's Zambian, but he's been here for a while. Every time we go to church, we either leave the church service with some chocolate, some jam, something.
Yeah, he's always got something.
He always has something. He's just an awesome human being. I think there's a generation, because if you remember, like back in the day, you went to there was the older community looked after us. I remember when young people were going to university, or you'll pack them something like something to tidy them over for a couple of days, and in there will also be like an envelope with some money or something. Yeah. We used to do that, so to kind of prepare them at least for a few days until sort of like their grant money kind of came along, if it did come along. You know what I'm saying? I think there's always been something in our community where no one ever lives empty-handed. Either you will get that, some story from an elder or something. It was never really something like you don't want to leave somebody without anything.
And if we take that back to our conversations here, again, we've been very fortunate. We've always been left with something.
That's the thing.
Yeah, every conversation we've had here has made me leave this space here with something, something to think about, to welcome. I mean, most of the time it has been just the incredible warmth which has been generated by the people who've been present. Well, actually, you've been in their company, and it's been a wonderful experience. That has. There's been so many. You could go through every single one of them, and actually, there's a lot.
No, there is a lot. You know, if one day, in your, when you decide to kind of get on with the idea of a book, you could actually literally we could literally just document every experience we have had through the podcast and literally be able to write a narrative, just stories brought by this.
Do you
brilliant
think
people.
there's a common arc, though, within those narratives? Because when they talk about him writing a novel, there's like a narrative arc that you've got this thread running through it as such.
Yeah,
you think there is, from the people we've had, is there that arc evident?
I think for me, I think there is, in the sense like I was saying to somebody recently, when I was approached by somebody in Tanzania about writing, writing some of the things that I put on my either on my TikTok stuff or in my LinkedIn, and I said the lessons I have learned. Because most of the lessons that we learn are either through the interactions we have. And for me, it has been those interactions I have with you, with Kambinga, with Shirley, with our podcast guests. You'll be surprised, how much I retain from those engagements. And I think if I were to write a book or something, or a narrative just about the podcast, it will be based on the conversations I've had with the people around me. Because also,
I'll put you on the spot then and say to you, what are some of the things you would be wanting to put into that arc as such there, 2 by 2 in the arc?
I think for me, it's like there's a conversation we had with Tim Cruikshank, where he spoke about his experience of his breakup, his relationship breakup after 20 years, and he went to a therapist and they told him he was grieving. And for me, I think what was evident is the fact that I think after the loss of my father and after the loss of my brother, I didn't grieve because I didn't even know what grief looked like. But then what will transpire as a result of that is years. I think, initially when my father passed, I remember saying to somebody, the first couple of years, I was at the university. I was at the Zimbabwe College of Music at the time. And I remember saying to someone later, in retrospect, saying that it was the darkest few years of my life. And a conversation I was having with somebody, I had a relationship with them for a fleeting moment. And then they told me about certain things that had transpired between us. And I remember having to apologize profusely because for me, I'm thinking, I literally brought my unresolved issues into a relationship.
Well, I think we do, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
And I think that thing you say about Tim, talked incredible in terms of the honesty and the raw honesty in terms of the vulnerability which he was prepared to share with us, which is one of the things which I know I've gained from, and I'm nowhere near where he is in terms of that vulnerability. But the honesty which he presents, but what he gave to me there and has since is that actually sometimes it is the only thing you can do.
That's it.
Is to be honest.
That's it.
And not, because maybe a part of me worries about what people will think, because the flip side to some of the things we're talking about is this sense of what people will think.
Yes.
And that judgment people will have. And what I've learned is that actually trusting in people and being honest with people, you are surprised how much people are non-judgmental and forgiving. And if you're listening carefully, really listening, then that doesn't come into it at all, because there's a sort of there was a love there.
That's it. And also, man, I don't know if this happens to you, but it's like initially the thing that we are uncomfortable with pertaining to other people. It's like both of us, we have children. The things sometimes we dislike in people are the things that we are struggling.
Ourselves.
Yes, we are struggling with, innit?
Yes.
And I think sometimes, when somebody discloses something, the initial shock, once the initial shock of the thing wears off, and then there comes this recognition for why we sort of like responded the way we did. Because sometimes, we don't want to listen because it's something that happened to us. So we will kind of, remember when we were kids, we would go, la, 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 you know what I mean, when we were children. Because we didn't want to hear, but it was something that we knew, we recognized. And I think we never really outgrow that feeling of the initial embarrassment, the initial discomfort of the thing that is being told to us. And I think when Tim spoke for me, it was the instant recognition, because I remember actually fighting back tears, because I'm thinking, I've never dealt with this thing. I did not moan. I sort of did in a way, but it's like most of the most unresolved things that we deal with usually manifest themselves like at the most inopportune time. Like I'll be taking a walk, because I walk quite a lot, and suddenly I'll find only sometimes, like, young people talk about, being triggered. Only it will take is just like a memory to die, and then suddenly I am weeping uncontrollably.
You say you're a weeper, you say?
Yes.
Well, yeah. Well,
I'm a weeper.
A weeper. I am not. A real contrast there. I am many of the things with people on.
You're more like stoic.
Yeah, there's a stoicism. There's a sort of like get on with it sort of thing there. But actually, there's an internal churn, which I think is actually one of the problems for many people. The internalization of, these toxins, of things which are maybe unresolved, things which are hurt, and all sorts of range of things there. Again, throughout the conversations, there's a sort of recognition that actually holding it in, and not looking for support in whatever way you can lead to real damage.
It does.
And there's all sorts of reasons why you might not be able to do that sharing with and seek support. But if you don't get that support along the way, and not just along the way in a sort of like transitory thing, but along the way, which then becomes a sort of like support structure, you can then find yourself being off kilter, sort of falling. And, if we go back to the very first podcast with David, and David says this very eloquently about, 40 odd years ago, black men were 6 times more likely to be sectioned under the Mental Health Act than their white counterparts. Today, we're 5 times more likely to be. And then he adds that this is an indictment on us all.
And that's it.
And, when I listened to that again, I thought, yeah, that is an indictment on us all.
It is.
Because it's a frightening figure.
No, it is. I mean, like we were talking, earlier we were talking about the fact that I think there has been this, there are certain conversations we are yet to normalize for our own sanity as a community.
Yes.
I think the whole mental health issue, the whole sectioning issue, is something that we can participate in the whole idea of making sure that we safeguard the safeguarding of our mental health, because trauma, as much as it can come from without, in the services we use, in the school system, in racism, and all that kind of stuff, there is an element of that trauma that comes from us within our homes. But we don't really talk about that because we know as a community we have always been very we hold a lot of things close to our chest, and we know a lot of things that happen within our community, but we refuse to talk about them openly because, again, you don't want to say, I don't want to be talking about my business to everyone.
Yeah, and within that, I think there might be, well, I know within my own family and others, well, this is my own take. I don't remember, other members of my family have a different view, but I've been surprised over the last few years as we've talked, as talking about mental health has got more common and more acceptable. The number of people, when you then say, yeah, I had members of my family who had mental health issues, will then say, yes, I have as well. And it's been sort of like, it's only now they're able to feel as if they can say it.
That's it.
Because there was a shame.
There was a shame.
And it was a shame there where, someone, because mental health was seen in society at large as this was something which happened to people who were weak.
Yes.
And therefore, by extension, then the family must be something else, weak and dysfunctional, and all the other bits there. And it's only in the last few years, I feel, that people feel as if they're strong enough to actually confront that and say, actually, no, mental health is like any other sort of like condition or thing about ourselves there, which, like anything, you need to look after it.
But that's it.
You need to look after it. If you don't look after it, then it will go into disrepair.
That's it. But then us who are, and then because also as a community we are a very spiritual, kind of group of people. There are some of us who grew up within the church space, where they will probably kind of look at mental health as either demon possession, which kind of became problematic because, and I guess that's why a lot of people didn't really approach certain institutions for help, either through talk therapy or medication or whatever you. That also kind of meant that, people will be quiet about having to talk to anyone about their loved one going through certain things, which could have easily been dealt with had they had the right medication or whatever. But then on top of that, because we have a very interesting relationship with statutory organizations from medical field and the police, to actually say so-and-so is going to be a danger to themselves or those around them. Now you call the police on them. And we have heard the horror stories.
Absolutely. I mean, you're highlighting there that we don't trust, and we have every reason not to trust many of the statutory organizations because they have let us down for eternity.
Yes.
So how can we then now be expected to feel as if... I always think back to when Dalian Atkinson, the footballer, who played for Sheffield Wednesday, I think he was in his late 40s, and when he got shot with the taser gun in Telford. And somewhere in the back of my mind, and I knew this wasn't really the case, but in the back of my mind, I was thinking to myself, I'm an older black man now. I'm not a threat in the way in which I could have been when I was in my 20s and 30s. That's what I was thinking. That incident was a wake-up call for me because here was a distressed black man. Distressed man, distressed person. We can go all the way to what he was distressed.
Yes.
But he was seen as a distressed black man. That isn't distress. That's an angry, dangerous person.
But that's it.
And that's how he was treated. He wasn't treated as he needed help and support. He was treated, he was a danger, so they shot him with a taser gun there.
Yeah.
So when you get that, you see that, and you think, that could be me, anyone in member of my family, how can I then feel as if I can then go and just sort of like, take you to wherever?
Yeah. Because you see this, I mean, like we have read a lot of, kind of stories, either in the States where literally a black person goes to seek help or calls the police to seek help, the police come and they shoot the other person. You see what I'm saying? And that basically is enough to make any rational human being.
Absolutely. If you're being rational about it, I won't go there.
Yeah, you know
but
what I'm saying?
All of that then becomes part of that bigger picture, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's a book there which I've mentioned before, written, an American book called Weathering.
Yes.
How, as a black person in a sort of white majority societies like in the West, that actually the weathering which you experience just is wear and tear on you.
That's it.
And that wear and tear just undermines you all the time.
That's
and
it.
therefore, you end up in a situation, people aren't talking about these things. People aren't having that sort of confidence to then go to their GP and sit with their GP for 5 minutes if you get that time there and say, actually, I feel like this.
Yeah. No, go on.
Because you just wouldn't do it. So I don't do that. I find some other way to, medicate myself there. And, the things which there are, whatever it might be loneliness, it might be unresolved trauma, it might be grief because you've lost a loved one and you've not been able to express that, loss as such. We also had it when we had the 1 in 4 group.
Yes.
That, if you use this as a sort of illustration, particularly of men here, which is, how do you deal with worry? And in this case, we're talking about worry about your physical health.
Yes.
You can deny it.
Yes.
You can deny it and deny it and deny it. You just put it away there. And what we got from that conversation was, in all cases of the 4 men present, it was the women in their lives who basically, cajoled them, did whatever they needed to do to actually get them to
go and see a doctor.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. And also there's women, I think like in most of the cases, they worked in that space, they worked in the medical field space. And I think somehow we are lucky as a community because most of our people worked within either the NHS or the care area, also social work and stuff. It's that also makes it. Also, they are aware of what goes on behind the scenes. So it's like when you approach those places, you know what to say and how to say it so that you can get what you need. You need to get. You know what I'm saying?
Well, without those women behind those men,
yes,
they would not have got
they wouldn't.
the help they needed.
No.
And, that's about physical health.
But that's the thing, to know. But,
Could you do that then? Are we doing that with regard to mental health? Something which has still got quite a high level of stigma attached to it.
Yeah.
Where, you're sitting there, maybe with your partner there, and your partner notices that actually you're not being yourself for a while there. You're quieter, you're angrier, whatever it might be, or the changes which a partner can recognise. But actually, she says to you, let's talk, or whatever it is, and you just can't talk.
This is of recently. I mean, it's like I openly talk about my own issues, my own issues, and we're talking about a friend of mine. Someone at the gym mentioned something about because we talk about everyone is on the spectrum or something. So I'm talking. For me, I'm very open with my family. We always talk about literally everything, and we're talking about the whole idea that being on the spectrum and all that kind of stuff. So, and they want me to go and get checked, to go and get the test and what have you.
What about prostate?
No. No prostate. How about
for autism?
For sort of like ADHD or something of that nature and stuff. Because I openly say I'm a functional depressive.
A functional depressive?
Yes, functional depressive. I think I've been depressed for years, but somehow I know how to mask it. And
I would say you do mask it very well.
Yeah, and I know how to deal with it. And anxiety and So depression, anxiety, like even sometimes, just my life is haphazard, but I manage to function within that whole chaos because we learned how to deal with what we have, like in a way that somehow. So yeah, so say, oh yeah, you need to get it checked in, which I've been kind of somehow managing to to delay. delay.
So you are what I'm talking about.
Yes, I am that guy. I am that guy.
You've got all these delaying tactics.
Yeah. I have those delaying tactics because I think sometimes it's like, as much as I would like to know what's going on behind the scenes, let me tell you, I've been to therapy, I've been all that kind of stuff. But sometimes you get to a point where you think more of your pocket than, because it's not cheap.
Well, it's not. I've had therapy as well. And I've been to counselling, etc. there. And I know in one of the Man Talk discussions, I sort of like said, I think that actually, even there, I was just doing avoidance.
Bro.
I was just basically trying to say, I was going through, not the motions, but...
it's like literally, I got to a point where it's like trying to kind of get like you're healed. Because, no, for real, for me, it's been like that. But then on the other hand, I was saying to another sister recently, I was saying, sometimes it's like, I feel like, if I was to literally just be as transparent as I am learning to be more transparent, it will break whoever is on the other side of the table, because I think I am always aware that sometimes, as much as I share things which I know will be helpful to others, because I'm a believer that the moment we become more open about our process and we're able to, we could either help somebody be able to deal with their own process. What about help
yourself, though?
I think sometimes, for me, one thing at least I learned from me is I think it's a journey, and I am aware, and I'm constantly talking about the fact that the things I tell others about the thing are my way of saying, this came to me and I'm dealing with that. You see what I'm saying? Like sometimes it's like the things that I talk about are the things that I'm dealing about.
Yeah. Because there is a view, isn't there? It's a bit like when you talk about parents.
Yeah.
And you've got children, which is the parents have to look after themselves.
That's it.
Be able to look after the children.
That is it.
So, you and I as individuals have to look after ourselves.
That's it.
If we are going to be able to support anybody else.
That saying about we can't pour out of an empty cup. Many of us as parents, especially, because we are giving to our children, we are giving to everybody else who comes to us. We are giving. We never really stop to think, am I running on empty here? Am I just basically surviving off the fumes? Because many of us are doing that. We've seen it. We see it financially. We see it, kind of physically. There are times, like at the end of the day, I'm so depleted. I struggle. Let me tell you, as much as people will see me in large gatherings doing what I do, I have always felt alone in those large gatherings, because it's like I'm so in my head, because I'm trying to kind of keep it together. So by the time I get home, I am absolutely shattered.
But then we are back to that thing which it's the central theme of the conversations we've had on the podcast, which is knowing that.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about that? Because that's the question which and we're talking here particularly for men.
Yeah.
You know yourself, you know many of the things, the things which are running around in your head, and yet we still don't do much about it.
But that's the thing.
Until there's an outburst, till there's a breakage along the way, and that breakage can show itself in many different ways.
But one thing, this is the weirdest thing. I on my phone, I have an app that tells me at 8:30 it's time to wind down. And one thing I have consciously done since my last, I'll say, job undertaking, which was like before I joined SACMA and stuff, is I don't attend certain events. There were events that like you get known by. So, oh yeah, we expect you to be there.
Yeah.
I don't go to that. And one thing I learned from Gambinga is Gambinga will show up and be seen and disappear.
You can do a fleet.
Yeah.
You're fleeting. You're there.
Yes, you are there.
Yeah.
You are there. You come in and assist in whatever capacity you are able to assist, and then have the power or the foresight to be able to say, this is not an environment that's good for me, so I will escape. And then he will escape. And then we'll be asking, yeah, where's Gambinga? He was here, but he's gone. And I think I like that because it looks like a man who is intentional in safeguarding. He knows what his triggers are.
I mean, someone said to me, and she said, oh, I really like what you said, and I don't ever remember saying it.
Mm-hmm.
She said, you once said that you have to have the ability to say no, and also the ability to hear no.
Yes.
Now, I deny I ever said it, because it sounds like it's too wise for me to say that. Because actually, in a way, it's trying to give yourself that license to... It's a thing Steph was talking about last week, about authenticity, which was about to be able to say, I can, I can't.
Yes.
I want to, I don't. This is me, this is not me.
Yeah.
Which so much of the time there, especially as black people, you're having to do that code switch. You're having to accommodate yourself into settings which are not made for you.
Yeah.
And that, again, is another part of that wearing.
That's
because it might be that every time, all the time you're doing that, a little bit of you is being chipped away.
Yes.
And then it might be to such a point that so much chipping away is taking place that you're just exposed to the elements.
No,
and
that's
then
true.
you're just getting blown left, right, and whatever there. And you're bowing, and it's whether or not you're going to just bow and be able to come back, or do you break? Too many of us have broken under those ill winds as such there. And it's how you can then, at a point where you're starting to go like that, be able to say, no, this is me. Or even to be saying, this is me, whether or not you like it or not.
That's it.
You know, which is, I don't need your approval.
That's it, bro. That's it. And I think, one thing I always find, why I was saying, I was excited about the conversation with Steph, with Stephanie last week was the fact that I think, like yourself and Gambinga and a few of other people that I converse with, I think one thing that has been pleasurable, that continues to be pleasurable about being on the podcast, is the fact that you come across conversations that are so, they challenge your intellect.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? And that being challenged and being able to, I would say probably even like backtrack on some of your own processes, to me, I think is part of why I like being here. Because many of us, as I would say more as men, we don't get challenged. We stick to our script and right or wrong, we will stick to that until the cows come home, and no one will ever question us in terms of the validity of what it is that we are saying. You know what I'm saying? And I think that has been one of the things that continues to be a joy, especially in this space, and also being made to recognize good practice. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's been great to see it. It's been great to hear people talk about. I mean, one of the questions you ask of all of our guests has been, so what is your thing?
Yes.
And one of the things which has come out of one of your things is actually people's ability, not ability, but just beginning to own the unfamiliar.
That's it.
You know, I'm not going to be stopped by anybody else's expectations of me. You know, and that might be expectations from within the community, might be expectations from outside of the community. So we have Delroy there and David Campbell there, both who do the triathletes.
Yes.
You know, and you know, Delroy talks about, you know, he's swimming there and he's the only
he's
black guy
swimming
there.
like in,
he can do it. I can let him have that one there.
Yeah. I will not be caught.
I'm
caught
not
dead
doing
in
that deep,
No,
that
no,
swimming.
No.
But you know, and you've got Mike Lawrence there. He talks about going off and doing his therapy, going across to the Southeast Asia there. We had so many people there. We had Franz Von there and the things he does.
Yeah, the Ryan Spence.
Yes, right. Yeah, Ryan with his.
Ryan. Yeah.
Yes.
They would tell you, I found.
I love that Ryan there was great, wasn't he?
Yeah. No, Ryan was like. I think also one thing that for me I noticed about Ryan, how gentle he is. It's just a gentle soul, and I think intentionally gentle. You know, and it's like, and also it's like some of the things that were coming off of him was he made me, because I was saying earlier that I am haphazard in my own practice, and I would love one day to somebody sit me down and say, this is how you do life, this is how you process things, this is how you plan and and watch what it is that you plan become something. I can write a plan.
He's executing it.
He's executing it.
With Ryan, got there. You're right about that gentleness, and it was a sort of like a warmth as well.
Yes.
Because, you know, I said before about that competition, which you often find. To be in the company of somebody where there isn't a competition and such, what you've got is a genuine warmth.
Yeah.
So it makes you feel as if you can actually be at ease much quicker. I felt at ease there. And Ryan also encapsulated something which I've been amazed with, which is everybody has such an interesting story.
Yes.
And the people we've had as guests, they have sort of like told me that we have such ability, talent, energy, drive, creativity within the black community here in Sheffield.
That's it, isn't it?
You know, when we met Nicole, and Nicole there. But Cole is like sort of like this.
The coolest guy.
The coolest, most
cool
articulate.
For days, man.
The way he talks, he's just got this sort of musicality about it there, and the strength of what he's got to say. He can come up with a turn of line. Which is the best.
You know, it's like, I think, you know, like... I think, you know, McCall is reminiscent, you know, like of the old Rasta, you know, like that whole Rasta mentality, you know, like, you know, just you're constantly conscious. You know, it's like a consciousness that just comes, and the intentionality in the words you say. Because he chooses these words very, you know, like intentionally.
Yeah. One of the things, so I've not been able to do this, but... I've been in his company a number of times in some formal settings, and we talked there about authenticity. What I like about an approach which McCall has got is not to be too imprisoned by a script.
Yes.
Go with the heart.
That's it.
The heart is the self. The heart is the soul. And people can, and that gives you some truth there. This is this person's truth. This is where this person is. It's not this, you know, because when the trouble often when you're writing the script down is that you're finding yourself beginning to write to somebody else's script.
That's
you're writing to their sort of conventions. You're writing, and that's clearly a difficult thing for, you know, people like Nicole and Steph. They're in academia where you've got these set expectations. This is how you're supposed to be. But that's also for many others who work in different settings. This is how you're supposed to do it. How do you keep your sense of self in these institutions which are not made for you?
That's the thing. And I do you know what? One thing I also that fills me with hope. I mean, I saw this when we had Jerome, and also we had Tosin and the friend. You know, the younger guests on the podcast is that they are aware, self-aware. You know, they are self-aware. I don't know whether it's a generational thing or not, but somehow I think this generation somehow have dispersed with, because with us we wanted, I don't know, I think it's probably, maybe it's a personal thing, but I think we were playing to somebody else's tune, someone else's expectations. And we knew that the job we actually went into was that job. We didn't have anything that we could fall back on. We didn't have a sideline. And also, like, a sideline was never a thing. You know, like some people...
That is something which you do see with the younger people now, which is there's more of a license to be entrepreneurial. There's more of a license to be creative. There's more of a license to try and go it out on your own there. And, you know, again, thank you for David Campbell, you know, one of the originals, in that sense of perseverance is an absolute key to that. And whatever you do, you do your very best at it.
Yes.
Your very best at it, whatever it might be.
Let me tell you, and I think, you know, like, I know I alluded to this last week or the week before, that, you know, like, in your absence, I was building my own podcast empire.
Yes. The Lungani show.
Yeah, my departure from Trims and Talk. I had a conversation with Aiden Rogers. Aiden Rogers is 23 and he works for himself. And let me tell you, he was like listening to a young David Campbell. You know what I mean? He's like David Campbell on steroids. In a way, he's got ideas for days. Yeah. I'm telling you, Aiden Rogers, if there's going to be a prime minister from Sheffield, he'll be Aiden Rogers. And
or someone who's going to be a big businessman there who is employing lots of people. Because, economics is important.
That's it.
Let's say, I say it in a sort of naive way, it sounds there. But, whoever... if you've got the money, whoever's got the money, in the end, you're paying a bit of homage to that person.
But don't you think that
we know that we're in SACMA, we're in a charity. We know that the funder, basically, you have to fit their tune a bit.
You have to fit their tune, and that's the thing. I mean, like, I think there's room for. I was saying to some people when I went to Sammy Barber's funeral on last Thursday. I mean, like, Sammy Barber was like, he was an institution in Sheffield. I mean, like, one of the first barbers in the city. Was one of the first barbers in the city, and he went on to do great stuff. And just listening to people talk about him, to me, it was evident that I think as a community we could do. I mean, I'll say our parents, like the 50s, those who came in the 40s, late 40s, and the so-called Windrush generation. When they came here, they seemed to have had a plan in terms of they build. That's the one thing they did was build. They bought houses, they youth clubs and whatever, which many are questioning that your generation somehow have spent more time basically building for themselves in terms of their own houses and their families.
No, that's a very good point,
there hasn't been...
It's much more about self now than something...
It's more about self, you know.
And again, I think that's something which has come out of these conversations, which is, we've had the benefit of hearing these conversations and being a part of these conversations. And it just says to you that, how do you... We want to have something where I think that people have space as an individual space to make choices, etc. We want them to be connected.
That's it.
Connected to something with depth to it. Connected to something which has roots to it there. It's connected to, as that Windrush generation goes, as that children of the Windrush get older and whatever, that these grandchildren and great-grandchildren, that they are connected to something which has meaning to them, because, that's also a part of the withstanding the trials and tribulations of life.
That's it, bro. That's it. And I mean, I know to wind off, and
we're gonna ask one another what's our thing.
Well,
that's how you sign off.
That's how you say no. But one of the things, actually, to your point about the connectivity, is the same conversation I had with Aiden, was around that thing of the lack of connectivity, but. He is part of, I think future guests, we have like co-ops and that whole 6+1 running
Yes, absolutely.
group.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and there's also something called Crew, which is also a collective of young people in that business space.
Yeah.
And I think there's now a generation of young people from our community who are doing things without support from mainstream, outside the purview of us as the older generation.
Absolutely.
Well, now being the elders of the community. You know what I'm saying? They are doing things, and of course they get the support of people like David Campbell and stuff, who are still very well connected and very busy in helping our young people. And I think we need more of that for our young people to do stuff within Sheffield. Somehow we will need to kind of help them to create that infrastructure of something, to go back to building again, and so that we can be seen.
I think that's a great place to actually end our reflections on our conversations.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's been, I'm saying it's been an awesome series. Maybe next time, the next one we have, it will be like season 2.
Are we supposed to call it awesome, or someone else to call it awesome?
For me, it's awesome.
I've absolutely adored it, and I've loved having these conversations with you. That's why I'm going to ask you first. What's your thing?
For me, I wake up 4 o'clock in the morning, 4ish. Go for a run, usually between 4 to 6 miles, sometimes more than that. What I call run is sort of like, the old man hobo.
Oh, you are that man then. I've seen you.
I am that guy, old man hobo. I run all over the Sheffield. I mean, it's not like the best place to run. But then after that, I'll go to the gym, and it's been my ritual. That's the thing that keeps me sane. And I think the walk is more important than the being at the gym, because that's when I get to kind of mule over things that are going into my mind and I process things. And until I get a kitchen like yours, I think, because he has a brilliant kitchen, and I think maybe we should do a cooking show in your yard.
Oh, well, that's if I could cook.
A baking
one then.
A baking
that's
show.
That might be an idea. Different locations. Thank you for.
So, what about you? What have you from the allotment? What have you developed?
Oh, I haven't done anything yet for the allotment. I mean, my allotment. So, in terms of my thing, I have an allotment, and I'm not very good at it. I love going there, and I have at the moment my potatoes, and I've got my onions and my garlic, and I've got seeds for beetroot, sweet corn, French dwarf beans, my tomatoes for the greenhouse, and I just like just pottering around, literally pottering around. I also have a garden, and I probably spent more time in the garden recently, just like flowers. Yeah. And I've surprised myself about that. I was out with some old college friends yesterday, so people I've known for 40-odd years. One of them, Tony, he said to me, I never had you down for that. And I said, I never had myself down for that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the great things about life.
Yeah.
You don't have to go script you wrote for yourself, allowed it to be written for you 30, 40 years ago. So I get great joy out of that. I also have a couple of other things which I like to say. One is I like walking. I love walking. And I'm a part of a walking group, which has been going on for 21 years. That's Walk for Life. It started as Black Man Walking Group. And, you know, we have, the last walk we had with about 18 of us walking on it. And that's been fantastic, that has. And, yeah, that's what, I'm in a book club as well, so I like reading. So those are my things, which are my things.
Yes.
And that is very much about this sort of like elderhood, this adulthood, or what you want to call it, which is you want to keep that mind going as much as you can. And I do French as well. So you've got to, you know.
You do French?
I do French, yes.
So
I'm
you
the
speak
world's
French?
worst linguist. When I was at school, the reason why I do French,
Go on.
when I was at school, there were 35 of us in the class.
Yeah.
And for a number of subjects, I'd be third, fourth, like English, history, economics, I'd be those sort of positions. But with languages, I was 33 out of 35.
What?
Yes, that's it. You said what? That was when my mum used to look at the report and say, what? That's my mum's reaction. What? 33rd?
What's going on? What's going on?
And then she wasn't saying to me, look, you're third in English.
Yeah.
But why aren't you? You're 33rd.
But why French, though?
Why French? Because that's what I did at school.
Oh, okay.
And I was so bad at it.
Yeah.
And French, there's part of me which I read a book by Johnny Pitts, who's a Sheffield guy, and he does this trip around Europe, and he's called the book Afro-European.
Oh.
Right, and it's about 6 years old, and he goes off to France and he goes to Paris, and in there he's basically amongst the sort of like French West African community.
Oh, yes.
And it just got me interested in, you know, here is another African migrant community with its many different types of people from all over, you know, West Africa, be it from Ivory Coast, from Senegal, from Mali, from Cameroon, from where so many places there are in there, in Paris, in Marseille, etc. And it just got me fascinated. You know, not that I've been able to ever have a conversation with any of those, anyone from there. I could have that conversation today, you know, if I was good enough. It'd be great to go down, say, to Jay's Barber. And I've been in Jay's Barbershop there, and I've heard people come in and they'd be talking, you know, in French there. So they're from Paris, wherever they might be. So that's where that comes from, basically.
No, that is awesome.
Yes.
On the other hand, I'm a linguist.
You were a linguist, are you?
No.
I am so bad at it. I'm embarrassed by how bad I am.
Hey, say Rome wasn't built in a day, bro.
I don't think my Paris will ever be built.
Is it? No, you were surprised, man. You were surprised, man. You know, we keep, you know, we keep, you know, kind of just what the thing that they say, you just keep doing that on the stick until it's.
You chip away at it.
Chip away, bro.
Chip away.
But yeah.
Yeah. Hey, that's been brilliant.
Oh, yes, it's been brilliant. Yeah, man.
Well, thank you to everyone who's out there listening to us.
Who continues to support us. I mean, we really do appreciate your support. And we also, for those who usually take a moment to comment, and please keep that conversation going and tell us what we can improve or what kind of suggest guests, you know, like we could probably approach in terms of kind of bringing on the podcast and having a conversation with them. We really appreciate you, and to many more years. Thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and never miss an episode. Until next time, keep those conversations going and the clippers buzzing.